Oh, hello there. I totally didn't see you. Oh, well. Um, well, I don't know what I can really do to make you feel at home here, but welcome. That's, that's probably the first thing I should say. So, you, you don't look like anyone from here. Is it just me, or is your clothes kind of different? You don't seem like you're from here. May I ask where you're from? What time? You may be able to see. I'm maybe not from your time. Um, so yeah, I kind of wanted to tell you guys some stories. I'll tell you some stories from World War One, World War Two, some real ghost stories, and I felt like putting the right get up on would be pretty cool. Complete with grenade and everything. So yeah, quite interesting way of doing it. Do you do save the world? I mean, I fought in a world war, so I guess I in a way kinda did. Dear God, my hair is quite interesting. But yes, I play Save the World. But now, I wanted to make this kind of more authentic. So that's why I put on the Pickelhaube. Damn it. Because it is... Because I wanted to make this a bit more like about World War One. So I felt like because it was kind of the only thing where I really had the uniform for it, the helmet, all that. So I wanted to kind of do something interesting. I wanted to make a bit of a, what do you call it? Because World War One ended on my birthday, November 11th, 1918. But we're not there yet. We are back in time. We are back in 1915, the end of 1915. Because in the beginning of 1916, this helmet would not be given to troops anymore. Oh, well, this one was never actually given to troops. This one was, I think this was an officer helmet. But well, these helmets were never given to the ordinary soldier. Again, after 1916, the early 1916. It was replaced with the Stahlhelm, which I'm pretty sure that was the M16 Stahlhelm. The the M32 Stahlhelm was the one they used in World War II, which I have one of over there. But enough about my helmets and all this. What I was here to do was to tell you guys some cool stories from the World War. Whether they're true or not, I can't say. But as you can see on the book, right here, it says true ghost stories from World War One and World War Two. So, I'm just gonna share the link to my server real quick. And then we will go into this. And that's it there. There we go. Okay, now I need to get something to drink because I am really, 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 really thirsty. And I feel like it would be really cool to that was so much better. Well, anyways, now let's get going with this because we only have about 2 hours. Because there's a tournament that I want to compete in. Anyways, so I don't know how this is gonna work because some of these are quite interesting, and some of these are like I'm trying to find the ones that are from World War One. Pilot turns up. There's a lot more from World War II in here than I would have liked, but so why is there so many goddamn... Oh, here. This is the story of the Death's Messenger by Harriet Laurent. About 10 o'clock in the morning on July 8th, 1918, my mother saw my brother Thomas walk into the house with a duffel bag in his hand. He smiled at her and said, "Mother, I'm home." Although Mother had received a letter from him the day before postmarked France, she rushed to greet him with open arms. But when she reached the spot where he was standing, he was gone. She was inconsolable, for she was certain that her oldest child had died. 3 days later, the telegram arrived stating that Thomas had been killed in action. 1 year later, my father fell ill. Once again, Thomas appeared. To Mother carrying the same duffel bag in his hand and said, "Sorry, Mother, that night Father died." 3 months later, my 4-year-old brother had convulsions, and once again Thomas appeared to my mother. She knew then that my little brother would not last the night. He died that evening. Each time she saw Thomas in the daytime, Mother is 83 now, and we fear Thomas's next visit will mean that she herself will go to join him. Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. Interesting. Amy saying, "Hello, your uniform is nice." Thank you so much. It is actually not. Sadly, it isn't really a World War One uniform, which it was supposed to be, because I used a fucking Pickelhaube helmet. In case you guys weren't here from the beginning, this is a Pickelhaube. It is the it was basically the first helmet that the German and Prussian army used during World War One, which was later. Well, basically, it was outdated when they, in 1916, in around, I think it was February, started giving soldiers the standard issue M16 Stahlhelm, or steel helmet. And again, the M32 steel helmet, or M38, I don't know which one specifically, but that's the one that they used in the Second World War, which I have one of right up there. So yeah. But this is a Lieutenant hang on, I don't know what this one is specifically, but it's something from the East German army during the Cold War, actually, but I didn't have a World War One soldier uniform thing, so I was like, you know what, this will do. I mean, it's got the 1914 Wilhelm Iron Cross, second class, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, now let's continue with these stories. They're actually really cool. I'm just really shit at reading them. Okay. They Came Over Together by Jay Cohen. While I was with the army in France during World War I, in October 1918, my wife Elizabeth and my daughter Ida were victims of the flu epidemic at Puyallup, Washington. Ida died and my wife never fully recovered. The shock of losing our only child no doubt complicated matters for her. In May of 1919, after nearly 2 years in the army, I returned home. My wife and I were making plans for the future when unexpectedly she died. I felt that I had nothing more to live for, that I might as well return to the army and gamble my life away. One Sunday morning, 2 weeks later, I woke. I saw that the hour was early and turned over for a few more minutes of sleep. Suddenly, I saw my wife standing before me. "Don't feel bad," she said with her brightest smile. "I just wanted to tell you to be careful with your associates. I'm happy here. Ida is with me. I saw someone in the background. And Frank is with her. They came over together." Frank was Ida's fiancé. He had gone to war and we had been unable to get in touch with him. Now that the war was over and I was alone, I wrote to a mutual friend to see if she could put me in touch with Frank. In due time, I received an answer to my letter. It said, "Frank was killed in his first engagement on the same day your Ida died. In truth, they came over together." Oakland, California. Interesting story. Some of these are actually more wholesome than anything, honestly. Of course, they're sad, but they're still kind of wholesome in a way that they came together. They came into paradise together. I think that's really cool. That's a sweet story. I like that. Let's see if we can find a bit more. In June 1918, I was a member of the famous Keystone Division, Pennsylvania's own 28th Combat Division, which had been ordered to support the front line in the Ain Man sector. I don't know if I said that right. I think I did. Whatever. We were stationed in a small, narrow valley immediately in the rear. Receiving orders to dig in, we used our trench shovels to dig small dugouts which protected us from everything except direct hit. And this is called The Voice in Death Valley by B.E. Rosling, PSD. The Germans were shelling us with high explosives and we had casualties every day. For this reason, the boys named this place Death Valley. One day I was dozing in my foxhole, sidearms close at hand, knapsack at my feet, my weary head resting on my folded coat, which contained my wallet that I usually carried in my shirt pocket over my heart because it contained a photo of my wife, a few personal papers, and numerous francs. No shelling was going on at the time, either by us or the Germans, and the air was heavy with a foreboding quiet. I was settling into a deeper sleep when I heard my nickname called. The voice had an urgent tone. I thought I was just dreaming, but I wondered who among the boys knew me by that nickname, which was used only by my immediate family. I heard my nickname called for the second time. The voice seemed much closer and more urgent. Puzzled and with an eerie feeling, I sat up and looked around. Most of the boys were resting in their foxholes, while a few were sitting up, cleaning and polishing their weapons. None of the men sufficiently close to me seemed trying to get my attention. When the summons came a third time, it was screamed into my ears. Frightened this time, I leaped out of my foxhole and raced down the slope. After I had covered about 30 feet, I heard the rumbling and a whine of German shell. I knew by its sound that it was gonna fall very close. At once, I dropped to the ground and buried my face in the dirt. The shell exploded so near at hand that some of the scattering pieces hit my helmet. When I regained my composure and returned to my foxhole, I saw that it had disappeared. In its place was a large shell hole, with here and there fragments of my equipment and tattered shreds of my coat and knapsack. It had been a direct hit. I shuddered to think of what would have happened had I ignored the call. Puzzling over who could have known my nickname, I now remembered that only my mother had used it, and always with that endearing inflection in her voice. Mother had been dead for 4 years. She had died young, and perhaps my subconscious could not eradicate the memory of her tragic and untimely death. Had it warned me, or had the admonition come from my mother? Jacksonville, Florida. What on Jupiter is this? Well, it's basically me reading a bunch of World War I and World War II ghost stories because, well, I wanted to do something different, and I feel like this is kind of different in that I don't really see many other people do this, and as a history nerd, I think this would be really cool to do. And I got a book in English, so I feel like, fuck it, might as well do it, you know? And I got uniform, I got helmets, I got all that shit. And even, as you saw in the other stream, if you were there, various guns. This is a Kar 98, by the way, in case you're wondering. So yes, okay. Now, let's see if we can find a few other stories about World War One. It's like I'm trying to go mostly World War One now because World War Two is kind of the one that everyone talks about. It's kind of like, well, I know it's like it's the second biggest war ever. You know, well, it's actually the biggest war now, but it's the second of the great wars. The big wars, anyways. Well, like it was called the Great War. At least World War One were so. Jessica's in the chat saying hi. Hello there, man. How you doing? Welcome to the stream. So to those of you who are new here, I'm a history nerd, and I love reading stuff from World War One and World War Two, as well as watching documentaries. But as I can't really just watch documentaries and shit on stream, I decided that I wanted to kind of read stories. So that gun is really, really cool. Thank you so much, Amy. That means a lot to me. Ah, shit. Oh well, let's just take this one from World War II. Possess them not with fear. Richard Wath. In his popular historical drama, Henry V. William Shakespeare's king advises, "Possess them not with fear," as he rallies his greatly outnumbered army together before the fateful battle of Agincourt. In any war, fear rides steadily as a close companion, not only for those brave souls fighting it, but also for non-combatants who are left waiting on the home front. During World War II, I was 18 and serving my time as a medic in the American Army stationed in England. Whenever the seemingly ceaseless traffic of wounded men slowed down and I could slip away from our makeshift hospital, I would run down to London to indulge myself in the magnificent theatre and a bit of sightseeing. It was because of these infrequent trips that I became a dedicated Anglophile, as I watched the British civilians struggle through the Blitz, and later the V1 and V2 rocket attacks. Their courage, their undaunted spirits, and even their unexpected humour moved me deeply. I have no idea what an Anglophile is. What the fuck's an Anglophile? I'm not new. I got the slippery BLSS. Oh, I don't know what that is. Okay. The ruined church. One Sunday morning, I was walking in London's East End, which had borne the brunt of the most recent vicious air attack, when I came across a church that had obviously taken a direct hit. The roof was completely blown away, as were great gaping sections of the walls and flooring. It was a mere skeleton of what had once been a beautiful building. I stood and stared at the remnants, which reminded me of the Methodist church in my own hometown. I cringed to think of it in its similar condition. An air raid warden walked up beside me in front of the bombed-out holy place and respectfully told me that it had been hit in the Friday night raid. Suddenly, from within the church, I heard the rubble and stood where once there had been an entrance. I'm stupid. I just sprung over a few. I heard the soft sounds of singing. It drew me like a magnet as I climbed over the rubble and stood where once there had been an entrance. There we go. Seated in the smashed up and splintered pews were about 50 people, some holding partial pages of old hymnals, others lifting their voices from memory. Where an altar had previously stood, an old cleric in an improvised robe led his small but faithful flock in the a cappella lyrics. I know you've had it for a while, but I think it's cool. Thank you so much. It means a lot. I slipped into a back pew beside an elderly man, who quickly nodded his welcome. The grand church organ had been fragmented to matchsticks, but trusting voices rang out clear and strong. A mighty fortress is our God. Behind the pastor, leaning against what was left of a soot-covered wall, were two shattered beams from the roof, roughly lashed together with wire to form a truly rugged cross. After the service, I felt a sadness as the singing ended. The minister offered a simple benediction, and the service was over. Then I followed the congregation as we picked our carefully... I cannot read. Then I followed the congregation as we picked our way carefully out of the ruins. In front of the devastated house of worship, I spotted two old Englishmen struggling to prop upright what was left of the announcement board that had once stood in the front area. I climbed over the debris and assisted them until we had it propped up again and wedged tightly among the piles of broken stone and brick. It was then that I read for the first time what was spelled out of the broken board. It was the title of that morning's sermon, which I had missed. The letters were askew, and some were missing, but it was still legible. Fear knocked at the door, faith opened it, and no one was there. I looked around at the ground of followers who had... I can't read. I'm so dog shit at this. I looked around at the group of followers who had gathered around me, and were also staring at the battered board. God damn it. Their faces were very tired, and their shoulders sloped with the weight of the world. They were scruffy and looked physically worn, but there was a mark of courage on their faces, and proud, steely glint in their eyes that told me that they had met fear head-on many times. Their faith brought them through. They smiled at me, some giving the thumbs-up gesture, others signaling the Churchill V for victory. Why was that so hard to say? Signaling. Why was that so hard to say? I don't know. Anyways, the two old men I had helped slapped me on the back and shook my hand, saying, "Thanks, Yank." And "Thanks, mate." Slowly the congregation backed away and started off their various directions, still focused on the words as if drawing strength from them. I started to walk back to where I could catch my bus, but decided to climb over the debris and have one more look at the shell of a building. It was empty now except for the broken cross, which caught a ray of sunlight and reflected it majestically. I too had known more fear in that last year than I had ever imagined in my youth. Death had brushed my sleeve more than once. As I stared at the rugged cross, I recalled in my mind's eye those people with determination in their faces, and I knew at that moment that if they could survive what they had gone through, then so could I. I was no longer afraid that I would die as a teenager, and I knew without question that I would survive the chaos around me. I could not help but wonder how citizens of the United States, say in larger cities like New York, Chicago, or Washington, D.C., might cope with such catastrophic devastation and death. Americans have faced fear. Not until September 11th, 2001 did Americans have a chance to prove their own spirit and courage. On that fateful day, I watched the TV coverage and recalled the scene in London over 50 years ago. I was proud to see in the faces of the New Yorkers that they too had faced fear and would survive. To this day, when for whatever reason fear knocks at my door, I confidently and with great faith open it. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that nothing will be there. Richard Vath is a former actor and director who has retired to Mexico as a professional writer. Interesting. That's kind of cool. I mean, that's just a man with balls of steel. And a really cool way of describing stuff. Okay, I need to get something to drink before I fucking die of thirst. Because, like, reading is actually really... Like, at least, like, reading out loud is... You know, like, you have to keep your voice, you know, ready. One second. Oh. Okay. 1 minute, need to check when it starts. In 1 hour, okay. Now, I'll read a few more stories and then we'll start a different stream for the Fortnite tournament in an hour. The Chair of Death by Lee Holloway. The Chair of Death, before it was removed from the Busby Stoop Inn, courtesy of Thrift Museum. For many years, the Busby Stoop Inn, located in Kirby Wisk, North Yorkshire, I can't speak, exhibited an old high-backed chair in a roped-off corner, but only the very brave or very foolish dared to sit in it. The chair had been the favourite of Thomas Busby, a local coiner and a regular visitor of what was then the Sand Hutton Inn. In 1702, during a drunken brawl, Busby murdered his father-in-law and was arrested and sentenced to hang. Defiant to the bitter end, as he stood on the gallows at the crossroads near the inn, Busby cursed his executioners and the crowd that had gathered to watch him swing. He was still ranting and raving as the trapdoor opened, sending him to his death. Everyone agreed that his final words just before his neck snapped were, "Death to any man who sits in my stoop." Busby's corpse was left suspended in a gibbet where it remained until the bones were picked clean by birds. That's kind of barbaric, isn't it? The curse takes effect. Within days of the execution, a man sat in Busby's chair one night and was killed on his way home. When a few more men met met their deaths within a day or so of sitting in the chair, the townspeople decided there might be something to old Busby's curse. But every now and then, after a few pints too many, some brazen young bloke would accept a dare to sit on Busby's stoop. Without fail, the foolhardy fellow died within a short period of time. The pub owner, deciding a chair of death might be bad for business, moved it to a corner and roped it off from the rest of the bar. Local patrons, having first-hand knowledge of the legends regarding the chair, wouldn't go near it. The RAF defies the curse. All went well until the 20th century, when during World War II, a group of RAF officers from other parts of the country stopped in at the Busby stoop. One asked about the chair, and in short order the men in uniform were daring each other to sit in it. Before the barman realized what was happening, two of the young men, cheered on by their comrades, jumped the rope and took turns sitting in the old ladder-backed chair. As the two airmen returned to their table, one of them suddenly fell to the floor. His mates bent over their fallen fellow officer, and in a panic, the barman ran out of the door to summon help. There was no telephone in the pub at that time. But he had gone only a few steps when he heard the sounds of laughter from within. He returned to see the officer getting to his feet. "See," he proclaimed, "it takes more than some old haunted chair to beat a member of His Majesty's Royal Air Force." Everyone roared with laughter. After the airmen left the pub, local men and women began questioning the reputation of the chair. It wasn't long before they had determined that the so-called chair of death was nothing more than a ploy to bring in business. The owner himself was having second thoughts, and as he closed up that night, he promised himself that the next day he would remove the chair from the corner and put it back out in the pub. Apparently, the curse, if there had ever been one, was over. The following afternoon, the keeper opened the pub as usual, but had forgotten to move the chair. A few customers who had wandered in a little early that day had noticed the barman lifting Busby's chair over his head. As he headed in the direction, one regular shouted, "What are you doing?" "Airmen killed after all." "Don't you know what happened?" another startled patron exclaimed. "Those two RAF officers were killed in a motor accident just down the road last night." "Don't bring that thing over here." The pub owner turned around, returned the chair to its designated corner, and replaced the rope. There were no attempts to sit in the chair until one stormy night, about a year later, when the Manchester couple stopped at the Busby stoop. After folding their umbrellas and shedding their drenched raincoats, the lady announced she was interested in the supernatural and had always wanted to see the chair of death. The husband, obviously as tired of his wife's obsession with the paranormal as from driving several hours in inclement weather, decided to prove to her once and for all that there was nothing supernatural. Certainly not so far as that banged-up old chair was concerned. Without further ado, and ignoring the protests of his wife and the young barmaid on duty, he marched towards the corner, removed the rope, and sat down in the chair, and crossed his legs. He then proceeded to remove a tin of tobacco and pipe from his pocket, and sat there leisurely puffing away for several minutes. "See, Evelyn, there's nothing to it," he called to his frightened wife. "It's all nonsense." But Paul, people don't die immediately," she timidly replied. After taking note of the time and the fact that the rain had let up a little, the couple departed, the man still mumbling about ignorant commoners and their ridiculous superstitions. The curse still worked. The following night, a local policeman stopped at the pub and mentioned that a car had run off the road near Thrisk. The woman in the car was not injured, he said, but her male companion was thrown from the vehicle and killed. The young barmaid looked as though she was about to faint. Her face was as pale as that of a ghost by the time she mustered the courage to ask, "Were their names Paul and Evelyn?" The policeman responded in the affirmative and inquired if she knew them. No, I didn't know them, but he sat in the chair last night. The pub grew deathly quiet, the inebriated becoming suddenly sober, as all inside pondered the inexplicable. Within the next few years, a hitchhiker who sat in the chair was hit by a car and died 2 days later, and a 30-year-old man from a nearby village dropped dead of a heart attack the night after he accepted a bed and dared to sit on Busby's stoop. Anthony Earnshaw, a recent owner of Busby's Stoop Inn, recalls other fatalities associated with the chair of death. There was a big athletic army sergeant major in here drinking with some other soldiers, he explains. They had all heard the story. It's in a frame there on the wall. And the sergeant major insisted on bringing the chair out of the corner and sitting in it for the evening. 2 weeks later, one of the soldiers came in. The sergeant major, a big, healthy chap who never had a day's illness in his life, had dropped dead 3 days after he was here. The chair removed. Earnshaw, convinced the chair was cursed, removed it from the tavern to the coach house behind the building. Unconcerned that he might be labelled ignorant and superstitious, Earnshaw declared he, Busby, promised sudden death to anyone who dared use it. I'm convinced that that chair has something evil about it. There have been just too many coincidences and scary experiences. I believe in the curse. I want nothing to do with that chair. In 1978, the chair of death was presented to the Thirsk Museum in Thirsk, North Yorkshire. The battered old chair is displayed in a room dedicated to antique kitchen and tavern furnishings. However, unlike other old chairs in the exhibit, the chair of death hangs high on a wall, well out of reach of any foolhardy individual who might attempt to sit on Busby's stoop. Lee Holloway is a writer and researcher living and working in Florida. In addition to articles, he has contributed to several books and has conducted research for television specials. Cool. Well, my fellow time travelers, it is now time for me to get out of this uniform here and end this stream, and I will start a new one where I play a game that you guys probably know as Fortnite. A game that is very new for me because, well, it will be released in about 100 and something years from now, 1915. So I will see you guys in about 100 years. Thank you so much for listening to the stories that I could tell you. So, now I'll get out of this